Blake, who's your hero?
Jesus, God, no, the Holy Spirit. I don't know which one to say.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is just trying to not get smited, and I'm here with my co-host who should have been struck by lightning ages ago, Toby Walters.
I do love that that sort of joke about, you'll get smited and struck by lightning. Like, I'm still waiting for it to happen because it should have happened like 17 times already today.
Well, I mean, Dave got struck by lightning in the church gear van.
That is true.
Maybe God was like, hey, I'll throw Blake and Toby astray, but then we weren't in the van.
Yeah. And for new listeners, I don't know which episode that was. It was in the end of year wrap up episode for Church Gear Disaster Stories.
2022.
Yeah. But Dave Roediger was driving the Church Gear box truck and literally got struck by lightning. So Dave, what are you doing out there, bro?
He's got superpowers now.
So Blake, do you have, what's your favorite podcast?
The Church Gear Podcast.
Okay. Obviously. What's behind that?
The Church Gear After Dark Podcast. The Fantasy Footballers.
Yeah. So you're a huge fantasy football fan. Like, do you have a favorite host in that podcast?
Okay, fun. There's three of them. I thought they all had. I thought two of them had each other's voices. So when I watched the video for the first time, it was really trippy. I'd probably say Andy because he kind of keeps it all together. He's like the dad.
Yeah.
We need a dad on this podcast.
We certainly do. Somebody to keep us in line. Back in 2007, 2008, 9, somewhere in there, and I'm sure that live streams were available, like pre-recorded sermons and messages. Obviously, they were on the radio for like decades. But
what's the radio?
Exactly, Blake. But when they became available on, podcast networks or on YouTube, I became a huge fan of our pastor guest today. So Matt Chandler was, and still is, like, I don't want to, I'm sure he would be uncomfortable with me saying he's one of my heroes. But, as far as a spiritual guidance, like, I've listened to him and loved his teaching for 15 years now. And so have you ever had one of those moments where you kind of met one of, your heroes?
They say don't meet your heroes. And yeah, I mean, I'm in that same boat where there was a huge phase where I was listening to just a ton of the Village Church podcast. So this was definitely, I think you and I were both a little starstruck, a little nervous than we've ever been.
Yeah, it was true. And I was like, okay, don't say anything inappropriate. What would Matt do? Wait, he's on the podcast. I could just ask him what he would do. And so here's a vulnerable moment for me, Blake, back in like 2009, I think it was. So, I used to have a band and I was trying to be the next Chris Tomlin, David Crowder.
Is that why you have earrings?
Exactly. I think I'm cool. And so back then we did a record and it was kind of a worship record and I got the CDs printed. Blake, do you actually own any CDs?
The ones you gave me.
So as a way to, say a thank you to Matt for all of his amazing teaching that been like serving me and my own heart and my life, I sent him my CD.
No, you did not.
I did send Matt Chandler my CD. So I addressed it to the Village Church and like, attention, Matt Chandler. And I put a note in it just essentially saying, hey, I appreciate all the teaching and the gifts that you've given to me. I just want to give back a little something to you. And of course, what I wasn't saying was, and if you could, tell anybody that knows Chris Tomlin that this is a really good record, that'd be helpful as well.
Well, maybe Toby, he was nervous because he was kind of meeting his hero too. He's probably worn that CD out.
What if it's actually like still in his car? He's like, bro, that's you. Like, that's one of my favorite records of all time.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it's doubtful, but maybe we can find out.
And what we'd like to find out is what went down in our episode with Wes and Matt from the Village Church. We'll go to it now. Introducing Wes Ashworth and Matt Chandler from the Village Church. Welcome to the show, guys.
I can't believe we're here.
Yeah.
It's like all the years of striving have finally paid off.
What did we strive for?
To get on this podcast.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it was this and then Joe Rogan.
Yes.
For me.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Man, you guys are so on the level of what we're thinking as well. We totally see the podcasting world as Joe Rogan followed by Church Gear, but then flip-flopping by, did we say mid-2024 or 2025, Blake?
That by 2025 and then overtaking Armchair Expert by 2026,
Okay. Yeah.
I like ambition.
Yeah.
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 I think it can be godly. It can be evil, but it can also be a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Wes, I got to visit you, I think it was this past summer, and I had this idea in my head even before coming, and it was Charlie who told us, hey, you guys should talk to Wes because he'd be a great guest. And then I'm like, I met you, and I'm like, yes, this would be awesome. Would Matt come on with you? So apparently you did it, buddy, but I don't know if you warned him at all ahead of time of what he's getting himself into.
I didn't give him much, no, but
Yeah.
he did. That just shows how much he loves me.
I do. I do love and trust
Yeah.
you. Now,
Yeah.
it could go bad for Wes in the next hour or so, but right
His
now-
performance review is coming fast.
Yeah.
And this
Yep.
is very much like gotcha TV, where we're going to reveal your lack of knowledge around production, Matt, and just embarrass you for that.
Shouldn't be too difficult.
You might reveal my lack of knowledge around production too. So
Yeah, I've got some theological questions for you.
Oh,
if
uh-oh.
Go back and forth, so we can do that.
Blake can
I'm in.
answer those.
I do know all of the begots from Abraham to Jesus, so I'm ready.
Yeah,
So, Matt, for some of our listeners, I'm, very excited because I've listened to your sermons and teaching for almost a couple decades now. So I, am very excited to talk to you and then about our subject today. But can you give just our listeners a quick snapshot background of who you are, how it led to, you leading the Village Church, and then ultimately, obviously, to the Church Gear podcast?
yeah. So my name is Matt Chandler. I've been pastoring the Village Church I'm in my 22nd year. So I've been here for my whole adult life is the way it feels. I got here when I was 28. Before that, I was doing itinerant ministry. I started a nonprofit with Shane and Shane, and it was actually not with Shane and Shane, but before that, I was leading a large ecumenical Bible study, and it was there that I realized that a lot of people on the worship band side of things will ask for things in their mix. And there were a couple of times I had to work a board. It was like an old school board where I was like, they were like, I had to go like, okay, they're number 4, number 6. And before I got to the knob, they'd be like, that's good, that's good, that's good. And I was like, oh, you guys are liars. I'm not trying to start any beef with worship guys. But I was like, that guitarist wanted more in his monitor. Before I touched the knob, he's like, that's good, that's good, that's good. And I'm like, well, okay. So I learned, I guess I'm just trying to relate, guys.
Yeah.
But that was my one time on the board. But I learned a lot. So no, I've been actively in ministry, primarily front of house, for 30 years. And
That's a good pastor joke right there. Front of house.
Well, I know what front of house is.
Yeah.
And back of house.
Yeah.
And all of that. So trying.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's me. I've written some books. I travel and preach. Married to Lauren for 25 years, 3 kids. My oldest just got married in November. My middle is a senior who graduates here in a bit. My baby girl's a 5, 11, 14-year-old who's going to she will either be the president of the United States, or she will run the most ruthless prison gang that there is.
Quite the range.
So we'll see. Yeah, we just got to see which way it'll go. Right now, it's trending well.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's
We'll
kind of
see.
how Blake's parents describe him, but minus the president bit.
It was just prison game or homeless.
They're just proud of me for having a job. And whenever Toby was like, hey, we're going to interview Matt Chandler, I was like, that's great. I've listened to him in my shower all the time for his sermons. And Toby's like, don't say that on the podcast.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Can you hear it in the shower?
Oh, dude, totally. There's a whole method for where you position
My
the
bad.
phone.
That's on me, guys. I just have like my phone that I turn on and set on the counter. So music, but no podcasts or things like that in the shower for me.
Now, rumor has it, and I'll just, call him out, that Wes said this was true, that Matt, it was actually your wife who pointed out to you how awesome Wes was and suggested maybe you should hire him full time or put him in charge of things.
Yeah, so that's partially true. I didn't hire Wes. I wasn't involved in that, but Lauren knows when Wes is on the board. And she also knows when he's not on the board. And so my wife has a great ear for how things are mixed. I can hear if something's off. I will oftentimes not know what that thing is. Like just a couple of weeks ago, I asked Sam, if the drums were off. And Sam was like, "Oh my gosh, no, it was me. I was off. It was I just got too excited." And so I knew that there was a wheel kind of going like this, but I had no idea what it was. Where Lauren can hear the layers. She's a musician herself, so she can hear the layers. And she would like Wes to work every weekend and every event that she attends. And I've tried to explain to her that's not reasonable. But so although I didn't hire Wes, he's very safe here as long as the first lady has any say or power. So
that's not the that joke's been made.
First lady joke?
Yeah.
Well, she was actually spoken in an event. It was an African-American event.
Oh, no.
And it was called the First Ladies or something. And she was there. And so it's been a fun joke at the house for a long time. If she snaps at me, I'm like, "Okay, First Lady. Okay, I'll get it done." Yeah. So, yeah.
So, Wes, when Lauren asks for a change in the audio, do you just pretend to turn the knob like Matt used to, or do you actually make the change?
Yeah, it's totally a placebo, right? No, she doesn't ask me questions. She just trusts that things are going to be good. Yeah.
She's only scary to me. Yeah, only scary to me.
Speaking of rumors and placebos, I think we should play some 5 Truths and a Lie here. And Wes, you have been awesome enough to give us a completely new take on 5 Truths and a Lie, because one of these, or I think all of these, Matt doesn't know. So we've customized all these to be about y'all's interactions, relationships, whatever. And one of them is a lie. So Toby, help me remember. We're going to make Matt guess, right? He's trying to find the lie here.
Is that the case, Wes, that you've presented things that Matt doesn't know and so he can guess?
I presented things that revolve around the realm of things he could be aware of but may not know the truth about.
Okay.
And I gave you 4 truths and 1 lie because this was a stinking hard category to come up with.
It's just because you are so open and honest with Matt on a regular basis that it was very hard to find any deceit in your relationship.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
He is pretty transparent.
So, Blake, I think it's us versus Matt
I think it is.
to see who can guess the lie. So give us the list here, Blake.
Here we go. Number 1, a friend of mine and Michela's had an overnight layover when we were house sitting for y'all, and she stayed in Audrey's room. Number 2, our audio console is roughly 10 times the dollar value of our lighting console. Number 3, half the time your pack doesn't work when you start to talk is actually my fault.
This will be a fun one.
Number 4, I no longer let Trevor Joy, our executive director of sending, control his own belt pack power. And 5, and finally, once the song Mr. Brightside by the Killers came on during pre-service with a full room of people while I was sitting backstage, and it got all the way through the first chorus before I could change it to another song. That's amazing.
So one of those is a lie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, read number 2 to me again.
Our audio console is roughly 10 times the dollar value of our lighting console.
I feel like Blake and I should guess first just because you have a little more context than we do.
Okay, go for it.
So, Blake, I'm going to say that the lie is that half the time his pack doesn't work, that it's Wes's fault, because I'm going to say that actually it's always Matt's fault. So we'll see about that.
Okay. I'm going to say this is tough because that was the one I wanted
Too
as
bad.
well.
You can't have it.
I want the Mr. Brightside to be true, but I'm going to guess he got it turned off really quickly. Like it did happen, but he turned it off. So I'm going to say Mr. Brightside is not true.
And Matt, you can guess any of them.
Yeah, you can piggyback on one of ours if you'd like. This is a year-long game, me versus Toby versus the guest.
Okay. I'm trying to work through it. I think had one happened, he would tell me or tell us. But then there is a possibility that he did tell Lauren, but Lauren never said anything to me. I'm going to go with 1.
All right. So Matt's going with a friend of mine. And oh gosh, Wes, tell me how to say your wife's name.
Michela
had an overnight layover when we were house sitting for y'all, and she stayed in Audrey's room. Okay, that's Matt's guess. Wes,
So
what's the lie?
Stayed in Audrey's room, or the friend stayed in Audrey's room? Or yes?
The friend stayed in Audrey's room.
Yeah, I think that's the lie. I could be wrong.
All right, we're locked in, Wes. What is the lie?
The lie is the Matt is always the one that is at fault.
So I win again, Blake and Matt Chandler.
I was going to say he wins by not being at fault.
The time it's you, that's too high of a number.
Right. So it's always you is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I believe that. It is always me.
There may have been a time or two where your pack was off and I hit the switch at the exact same time.
Okay.
Where like we were, but like I was going to be wrong had you not had the back off.
Come on. Yeah, no, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
Not shocked at all.
I just want to let the world know right now, I just beat Matt Chandler in anything.
I'm going to edit it out, Toby, so that I can take this from you.
No.
For people who know me, it's going to be easier for them to believe than you think.
I do want to give Matt kudos though on a podcast where production people hear this. He never blames it or like blame shifts. He always like, oh, that's my fault. Literally every time.
Because I know it's my fault.
And we're going to get to that question later on in the episode. So Matt, for our techie listeners, tell us what your audio console and lighting console are. And explain to Matt why one is 10 times more than the other.
I'm going to defer to my good friend Wes here on this.
So we have a Avid Venue S6L for audio, and
of course,
it actually accrued in value since the time that we purchased it.
Thanks,
I can tell for the amount that I could probably come close to even now if I sold it if I wanted to, just on how much it's accrued in value over time. And then our lighting console is a Roadhog, a high-end systems Roadhog, which is around the 12 to 14,000 range.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to, request some budget adjustments in this moment, or are you just good?
Oh, I know them.
Yeah,
documents and hand-drawn designs. I've got them.
We're actively talking through the process of worship center overhauls.
Okay.
Because only 2 new pieces of gear, for the most part, we've purchased in the last 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years. Think about that one.
Yeah.
Remember what your computer looked like 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Because I don't.
Life cycle.
We're pretty well behind technology-wise. We're trying to catch up.
Yep.
Aren't we all? I would have been trying to catch up to turn
the brand new computer.
Yeah.
Not cutting edge right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. I forget if we were recording when I said a piece of rat gear pancaked my computer in the warehouse. So I lucked into a new one.
Would that work with your head if you just got knocked out by one of the pieces of rat gear? Can we upgrade with a new processor?
If you're giving me a new head, that's great. Jesus gave me a new heart. If you can give me a new head.
There you go.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
There it is. Now it's officially a Christian podcast.
Wes, were you sprinting to the board to turn off Mr. Brightside, or was everybody kind of bebopping and you were like, you know what? Let's keep this going.
I mean, if you've seen our worship center on a weekend, there is no sprinting through the aisles. It's you're plowing through people to get past anybody. No, I was moving as quick as I could without knocking people over. But also, it's just kind of funny. I don't even know how it happened. It was like a Spotify blunder where we got to the end of the playlist and somehow that checkbox was checked off where it's like play other songs outside of the playlist.
I just can't believe I didn't get any email. That's what I was like. And maybe that's the lie, because I don't remember any email going, hey, that song's inappropriate and happens to be one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even know that song? Oh, it's great, but shouldn't be played in the house of the Lord.
So, Matt, I'm going to put you and I on the same wavelength right now because, I identify as somebody who gets a vision directly from God and then has to partner with other people that have to help me carry out that vision.
It's getting thick in here already. It's getting thick.
So Blake and I have occasional tense moments where I'm expecting something and he's expecting something, and sometimes those two somethings don't line up. So for you guys, do you ever have tension in your relationship together? Can you remember a specific moment where it got tense between you guys and you almost came to blows? I mean, you sat down like mature Christians and worked out your differences. How do you guys handle conflict together?
Well, I think our story's been one of I want to invite Wes in to help me understand what I know I don't understand. And then he's usually a part of the creative process. If we just came here from service planning. And so he's in service planning with me as we're talking about the different elements. And I need him to be honest in that room about what we can do and what we can't do, or at least what it takes to do what we're asking him to do. And so I think that stopped us from having too many moments like that. Wes has been frustrated overall before about either a direction we're going or a way that he feels unseen. And he's come in and shared that with me, but I've extended an invitation for him to do that. I want to know if he's redlining or feeling thin, or if he's being asked to work 80 hours a week, or I want to know those things. And so we really haven't had between us any kind of fallout that I can remember. We've had robust dialogue about needs that we have, frustrations that he has, and trying to produce for us the product we say we want without, as you've already heard, a room that's 15 years old, on the production front.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of conversations we've had. Never, and then, he's been shuffled around a little bit in reorgs, and some of that's frustrated him before, like it would. And, but as far as he and I go, I think we've always, I enjoy Wes as a person. I like how the Lord's built him. And I like how honest he is. And so I've tried to invite that honesty in, because it'll help him as he processes with me. And then it'll help me understand, if that's what we want, then I need to go fight for some dollars. And so, yeah, him and I have not had a dust up.
Yeah. And Wes, you told me that you report directly to Matt, which is, I think it's the first time I've ever heard a production leader reporting directly to the senior pastor. And so is that actually the case? And so do you feel like you have a direct line to be honest with Matt and share things that a lot of production leaders wouldn't have the ability to?
Sure. So point of clarity. Yeah. So point of clarity. I never actually, there was an individual in between me and Matt.
Okay.
That was the worship production director. The way that Matt and I operate, though, is he knows that if he needs something production related, typically like Andrea will ask me, or it will come direct to me from Matt, unless it's organization-wide things that need to come through the director level. So there is that kind of, it's almost as if we work right next to each other sort of thing going on. So just to clarify kind of how that works right now, though, we did just undergo a reorg. And so now worship and production go up through a kind of a parent umbrella that's called events and engagement. And then that goes up through the executive director level into the lead pastor's office. So it's a little bit different, but our working relationship has not changed whatsoever.
No.
So you feel like you have an ear to the lead pastor, and he hears your voice. And I think that's, very unique. And so do you feel like, when things are hard, when you're frustrated, that door is open, that you can share those things?
Yeah. I mean, shoot, he's told me in person, like, you call me if you need to call me. I may not be able to answer all the time, but I'll call you back. And there's just an open door policy, if you will, with Matt. And I've seen him extend that to more than just me. That's to anyone who needs him, who will try his hardest to make himself available for it. As it pertains to us, I think because our work is so kind of closely related and all weekend gathering specific, I probably tend to want to go to him more frequently than maybe some other leadership just because of that proximity. But I also know we do tend to process things similarly from a personality standpoint. I think we do think similarly, or maybe we come to similar aggressive sort of thoughts before we have a chance to come back off the ledge. And so because he's weathered those storms before me, I can be not unhinged. What am I thinking of? I can be unfiltered.
Unfiltered's better.
I can be
unhinged.
Unfiltered, and like it's not gonna. There's no threat of, hey, you shouldn't have said that. You're out of here. Like none of that. Like he's gonna hear it and he's gonna take it as, man, he just needs somebody to like hear him and listen, and maybe even pastor me through some of that stuff too. And he does it.
And I'm going to throw you, it's not quite a curveball because you guys brought this up just a minute ago, but you mentioned something about an aging room. And I think a lot of our audience is, sitting there biting their nails like, yeah, I've got a crazy aging room and I don't know how to have that conversation with my pastor of, this could easily cost $500,000 or more to do the upgrades we need. How do you broach that subject, Wes, when it's a very expensive ask?
I think what we have going for us is we're already undergoing a capital campaign for a bunch of stuff on campus. And so because we're in a scenario where everyone knows that a lot of our equipment is in that kind of end of life cycle area, it's pretty easy to broach that subject. I think generally speaking, we're an organization where if it's weekend critical and something's going to die, which has happened a couple of times, we got a temporary lighting console through church gear because of a scenario like that. And product placement. There you go.
Sending that check now.
Yeah, that's right. Because of that, like, okay, next day, what do we need? What do you guys need? How can we, make this happen? Now, when it's like, man, we're technologically behind, but we technically have stuff that is working and it's maybe not what we want it to be, that's a whole different subject. That's not like here's $1 million to go overhaul your room. So where the trick comes in is we need everyone to be on the same page. Like I can tell leadership, here's what I think we should do, but I need them to tell me, what's your vision for the room? Mm-hmm. I can tell you technology wise what we need in order to accomplish that, or what the integrator says we need to do. But I can't just go make that call. And so I have to be willing to, dance around and go through the red tape in order to actually, get to the end result. And it's taken years at this point, but that's just what it takes. I think that's probably been the single hardest thing for me. And I think every other production guy out there would probably agree with that, but that's been the single hardest thing. And at least in the last 2 years for me to navigate, it are those kind of capital expenditure conversations. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I've had issues with, and not to like point a finger at anybody. There's identity stuff for me that's wrapped up in, why aren't they listening to me? Like, why some of those conversations are even harder. And so that's something that I have to work through personally, so I can come to the table in a way where it's not me thinking ill will or that they're thinking ill toward me. No, they're listening to me, but we all have to kind of come to a conclusion and agreement and all land on the same thing. And there's going to be compromises that need to be made. So I don't know if that answers anything or even brings clarity to anybody who's listening, but it's not any easier, being at a church with a larger budget. So,
yeah. And Matt, do you feel like, one of the things with Wes is that he's built up that trust over years of proving that he is on board with the vision, that when he comes with big asks, that now people trust him to listen. Okay, this is for real.
I don't think there's any question that Wes is highly regarded at the highest levels here for how he serves and the tirelessness by which he serves. I think on our side of things, what can get lost is the complexities of all the needs on any given moment and how best to attack those needs. And so, man, if I had $10 million to hand Wes and team right now to build the ideal scenario, we would absolutely do that. But the reality is we do have $10 million and we've got, $20 million worth of stuff that needs to get done. And if you're a smaller listening to this, you might like, that sounds crazy. But I mean, we're out of space. We're turning away. So we're adding services and doing a major retrofit of the corner. And part of that is an overhaul of the sanctuary. And so I don't know what will get freed up to do that, but we're committed to it. And everybody knows, hey, this is mission critical. Like the weekend drives the life of the church. And so how do you stagger it in such a way that you're putting it together in a way that's wise, but you're not losing what the Lord seems to be doing over here and over here and over here, mm-hmm. which is, $100,000 here, $200,000 here, $400,000 here. And so that's the dance that you're in. If you're in my seat, is I can see, like, he's not speaking in hyperbole when he's like, man, I hope next weekend this works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see that and go, great, let's be prepared for that as best we can. And we're moving towards it, but I don't have the date. And then I never knew, some of the things that have happened over the last couple of years have been these kind of seismic shifts where it looked like we were moving. That was the next priority. And then some sort of,
pandemic,
some kind of chaotic thing was introduced into the world and it changed it. And so Wes has been good about absorbing a lot of that over the years. He's not the boy that's crying wolf. He's like, no, seriously, there's a wolf in here and we need to handle this thing. And so there is a commitment on our end to get that done, but how much and exactly what plan, that's still in the air. If I was king and could just make a decree, it would be easy, but we we've decided not to do church that way. And I'm a voice
Mhm.
in a true plurality. Thank God.
So Blake, I don't know about you, but what I just heard is that Wes is getting $10 million for production.
What I heard is the
Yeah.
new way to get an upgrade is to say there's literally a wolf in here and I need a $10 million gun.
No, you set loose a literal wolf in your auditorium.
We're giving
Well,
such bad advice.
Pretty quick here.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, church I'm at, just recently the pastor was doing a very heartfelt moment, talking about a moment where he was embarrassed by his behavior and regretful and just kind of, confessing the moment to the, how he had hurt somebody's feelings in a specific moment during a sermon. And at that exact, it was like the cue was planned. The lights turned off on the pulpit. And so no other lights turned off. It was just the two lights on the pulpit. And so he kind of looks around and he says, and apparently that was the lighting person that I offended. And of course, the whole church just erupts.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Matt, from your perspective, there's those inevitable moments where something goes wrong in production. You said you're willing to own when you did it, but when you know it wasn't you, how do you address that with the team? Do you ever find yourself getting frustrated at those, or is it, just a conversation?
I always want to understand what happened, but rarely do I get upset by human error unless it's consistent. I will oftentimes, if something goes wrong, try to leverage that to remind people we have a great need to update. So this past weekend at the 4:00 service, we had a video queued up to play. We were honoring one of our guys that's been here 20 years. So the 4:00 starts, the lights go down, nothing.
Video starts playing, but no audio.
Yeah, video starts playing, no audio. So I'm up there. And so I was just like, see, guys, I just said, we've got to update this room. And so I just used that as an opportunity to go, hey, guys, we need your money.
Yeah.
We need to update this room. But I don't tend to, unless it's never like anyone who makes that kind of mistake they're not trying to sabotage the service. It's not somebody who's like, I'm going to kill these lights or mute this. So show them, there's nobody serving that way. So I get it, man. I've mispronounced words and I've said things I regret and why do I get the pass and nobody else does? And so I'm not that guy. Now, if it's consistent, I might be like, hey, that kid needs to find a new place to serve. Or maybe we shouldn't let the 14-year-old work the lyrics. Or, there's a certain level of excellence I expect. But I also know that there are a lot of human beings involved. I've made enough of my own mistakes to have a lot of grace for somebody who might make one. Now you make the same one 4 or 5 times in a row. Now I probably what's the best way to move this guy on or this gal on? But I don't think I've ever gotten frustrated by something that's happened like that.
Yeah, it's probably helpful too. We all own our own mistakes. And so if there's something there, we're quick to be like, here's what happened. Sorry about that. We've got it covered already. But then there have even been times where every sound guy's worst nightmare is when there's beard popping and a face mic. I got to
worry about that.
I got applause walking on stage one time because I went to fix a microphone in the middle of the sermon. But what was funny was it also disarmed the room.
Yeah.
And it made the guy that was teaching, because it wasn't Matt, it made the guy that was teaching more comfortable, like I was taking care of him and this was no longer action. So that honestly, that's the culture here too. I would not have chosen for that to happen, but that was probably the best case, worst case scenario,
Yeah.
That stuff it just lets everybody know you're human and it's not a show.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe there's a pastor watching this who that's your thing, man. Something goes wrong and you're like nobody's not going to become a Christian because the guitarist unplugged and it popped or nobody's like, I knew this was all fake. That's not what's happening. And so I think my experience as a pastor in the same place for 22 years is that stuff actually helps everybody breathe out. And so I'm with Wes in that we don't want it to happen. We want to plan to be as excellent as we can be. But when the inevitable thing happens, it's not time to go find somebody to burn to the ground. It's just time to remind the room and rest with the room and that we're all human beings here. And so, yeah, I don't don't do that. I have my things. That's my thing isn't to get mad at some poor guy on a camera who's probably volunteering, or, the production guy who's using a board, not a board, but something that's 15 years old. And, now I'm frustrated that's not working right. And so that's not going to be how we do things here.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like our podcast editor keeps coming to me and saying, I've edited out Blake's flubs like 17 times now. Do you want to take the 14-year-old off the mic?
And Toby, is a glutton for punishment. I appreciate y'all sharing that, because that was truly my favorite question as we prepped y'all's entire outline, because I feel like there's so many production people that's their worst nightmare, and they're thinking their pastor hates them. And I knew you wouldn't let me down. I was like, they need to hear another pastor say, dude, we don't hate you. Like, that's not running through our minds when that mistake happens.
So, Matt, on a slight shift, and granted, this is going back quite a ways when I remember you talking about your philosophy at Village Church. You don't pay musicians. Musicians are volunteer ministry. And is that still the case? And does that also apply to the production team? Like, how does the production team work? Are there paid staff members, but then there's all volunteers? Or do you guys contract as well?
Say this, we do pay musicians in a pinch. When we're in a rock and a hard place, we will absolutely leverage some dollars to help fill in gaps.
Yeah. By and large, we don't pay musicians. We use contract label or contractors to fill in the gaps, but I don't know that it's a long-term solution. For us, it's a Band-Aid on a journey to getting to where we need to be in regards to full-time staff. We are understaffed in production here. In fact, I've kept my eye on Wes because I think he's working too much and working too long, and he's got a wife at home. And it's not a win for me to pull off all these events and watch, Wes's marriage fall apart. And so
it's not.
It's not falling apart. Just
we also don't want it to get there.
That's right. That's right. And nor do I want his wife to hate the church. I mean, I've been around long enough to know there are certain wives that feel like their husbands are being terribly taken advantage of. And I don't want that. And so contractors are good as you move towards the ideal, at least for us and our philosophy. And then we do have key volunteers that Wes has trained on the board. Some of those guys have a background in that already. But we have key volunteers that'll own the board. And maybe that's why Lauren knows when Wes is on the board and when he's not. So did I answer the question fully? Was there a third level of that question, or
another layer that maybe we didn't? Yeah. So there are a couple of production guys that are on the board. We will pay production contractors to fill in the gaps specifically. So we don't pay musicians, but again, to fill in the gaps, production contractors, so that way me and my counterpart Mark can have nights off or days off or weeknights off or whatever. But again, a Band-Aid to having a full complement of people who can care for those spaces.
That's right.
At a high capacity level where we don't have to, remote into the building to fix a problem or something like that.
Yeah.
And Matt, how often is, your mind pulling back on like, I really want to do this, but I realize this is going to tax our people too much. So I'm going to say no to protect our people.
I've done a little bit of that, but I'm oftentimes asking about what kind of bandwidth we have, or what I want to do is frame like, this is a season where I need us all to hustle. This won't be our life, but this might be a year, or this might be 3 months, or this might be, and so I have done things like that. But the question of how will this affect production is in almost every room I'm in now. So even in exec last week, there was this idea for this next October, and Lindsay, who represents the room, said, Grant has said, and that's Wes's direct report, they want to do this. So in that instance, it was for the season of October, and it didn't come to the room until Lindsay had already run it down. So by the time it even got to the room, it'll be my event. It was, we've talked to Grant and they want to do this. And so that would be an example of how we want to be mindful. Another example more recently was I was out of town and the exec staff decided on our Christmas Eve services. And what they didn't realize is that because Christmas is on a Tuesday this year, They wanted to spread out the Christmas Eve services it's on Wednesday. They wanted to spread out the Christmas Eve services on Monday and Tuesday. And I said, as soon as I got back in town and read it, I was like, you just put me and our production team on the line Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, which means Christmas morning is ruined for everyone because we're exhausted. And so you try to find the line of what's best for your people, right? Because that matters. Like, when can people come? When can we fill the room? But also not do that to the detriment, if possible, of the team. And so we shifted that completely. We'll do normal service on Saturday, Sunday. We'll give Monday off. Tuesday, we'll put all the New Year's or all the Christmas Eve services on Christmas Eve. Another example is we do a kind of 10 to midnight on New Year's Eve. It's one of my favorite things we do. It's not a big event, probably 200 people. And I have tried to repeatedly say that I don't need, it's a guitar and vocals. I don't need anyone from production to be there. I'll open it, I'll close it, I'll shut it. Now, Wes has shown up before year one, just because Wes is Wes.
It's also the kind of space I'm hungry for. It's a prayer and worship night.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all it is, a prayer and worship night. But I don't want to cause my production team coming off Christmas and Christmas Eve on a week that's technically off for them. We give the weekend between Christmas and New Year's off. I want to take one of their nights, go, from 10 to midnight, I'm going to need you up here to run this. I just thought it's an easy system. It's a guitar and a vocalist. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. So those are some examples of how, but I'll say we learned that the hard way. We might be doing it well now, but we certainly haven't done it well historically. And so I'm grateful for where we are right now, where we do hustle. The Village Church hustles. We are a big church with a lot of events. I am on the thinking wavelength, nearly pegged to the right. So all I am is ideas.
Yeah.
And so I have learned to appreciate people that are on the other side of the thinking wavelength to me, as me desperately needing them so I don't kill everyone, including myself. And so we're in a season, I think, where there's a lot more synergy there. I don't like where we are in regards to how we've reorganized in the last couple of years, because it has put a lot more weight on production. They're down a guy. But they've been asked to do more with less. And so this is a season where we're filling that in with contractors, and we're trying to get creative on hires and residents. And we're playing a game right now that we need to solve fairly quickly.
And there are churches out there where the production guys are working 90 hours a week and the pastor doesn't know. And God forbid he doesn't care, but to both of you, whose fault is that? Is that both the production people not speaking up? Is that the pastor's vision going overboard? How do you recommend they potentially reconcile?
I think it's probably both. I think it's easy to forget every time you put an event on the calendar that requires production, that you just made a decision for more than just you, because most of the time I'm saying I'm willing to sacrifice to do this. And so then I might even expect Wes to be willing to sacrifice with me, since I'm willing to sacrifice. But what's not in my view is that he was actually already up here on Wednesday night for recovery. And on Thursday, they had this event, Young Lives in Suite 288, and he had to be up there to do that. So I'm going to sacrifice my Friday night for the kingdom of God. So Wes should be willing to, probably doesn't have in view, well, what you just did, because you have Saturday night services, is you took him out at night away from his family on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if Sunday's an encounter night. And so what's one sacrifice for me ends up being 5 for him. So it's not apples to apples. And I think that can escape, especially in a larger church, a lead pastor's view of what exactly he's doing to his production team, because all he sees is the things he's at, and might not really realize that recovery ministry, that student ministry, that young adult ministry, that college ministry, that they're all using production in their spaces. So I think part of it's the lead guy. And then part of it is the line coming up from production that needs to be able to say, we're at a breaking point. And if you don't want to have massive turnover in this department, you've got to get a handle on this. Now, you can burn through guys if you want, but it's ungodly, cruel, and certainly isn't near the heart of God for people made in his image. So I think it belongs to both. I think it belongs to both.
On the production side, I think you guys had Todd Elliott on. I know you had Todd Elliott on. I think he was the one that talked about a story about a relationship where the production guy went up to the pastor and the pastor said, the production guy's wife went up to the pastor.
Yes, that was Todd.
It's Todd's wife.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And she was talking about how she went up to the pastor and said all these things. Like, no one's asking him to do that, right? Something along those lines.
Yeah. It's basically his wife went to the lead pastor and said, hey, you're totally overworking my husband. He has way too many events and you need to fix this. And the pastor's response was, well, Todd's a big boy. He can come talk to me himself.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Andrea was doing something on the computer over there. I think she was checking to make sure it was still going, and it is. Anyways, yeah. So I do own that. Like, that's not, it is those things. Yes. I think that needs to be in view from the leadership side. And at the same time, like, man, I came here when I was 26 and I wanted to be at everything. I wasn't married. Like, I had the ability to do that and I loved it. And I wouldn't change it. I'm also now married and I want to be home. I want to not have going home be like a second job. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's still primary. But it doesn't mean that I can't love my job also. So there's a kind of a marriage there that I have to reconcile. And at the same time, I don't want my identity to be wrapped up in the thing that I do here for the church. And so like, I'm actively seeking out help through counseling or hashing things out with Matt for my own personal benefit. And I'm trying not to stay there because that is very much a season that I'm in right now where I am burnt out. But it's not the church's fault, you know? So yes, it's both, very much so both. And I think that probably is a piece that a lot of churches miss, what Matt was talking about. But I also think that equally most production people probably don't give themselves permission to not be at everything. Yeah. Nobody asked me here to do all the stuff that I did when I was 26. And so people ask me to do things because I was available all the time. I made myself available all the time. That was the expectation that I set for people. So that you can own that too.
And production guys can be achievers. It's not just lead pastors that tend to be driven achievers. Production guys can. And so they're serious about, they're going to be there because they, you know, so the thing that the lead guy gets blamed for oftentimes exists in the production guy too.
Yeah.
So he's just as driven and just achievement oriented as the lead guy is. Now you got two guys that'll kill each other, not on purpose, not in fighting, but they'll just keep going hard until one of them flames out or both of them flame out.
Especially when they're both.
Yeah.
And are there any official job openings in production at the Village Church that our potential listeners should be aware of?
Hopefully soon. We're at a percentage salary cap on our budget at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
But
there's a residency open.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is.
Great.
Residency.
I'm going to send you Blake. Good luck.
2 years. It's a 2-year run, Blake.
Blake, if you want to support, come over here. Bring it on.
But
Blake,
there's with and for you.
Yeah.
So
you know, the way that Matt talked highly of Wes, I'm ready to switch boats. So I'm ready to jump, Toby.
Blake, have you ever felt Dallas in the summer?
Oh, I would die. Yeah. Also, I'm a Commanders fan, so I'd get kicked out quickly.
I can't. No, I don't. You'd be fine. There's plenty of that here. I mean, you're still gonna be really sad during the football season, but sad here.
Yeah.
You just be sad here, buddy. It's all right. And I have no skin in the game. I could care less, but I know your team's terrible, but
it's okay, Blake.
It's been a tough 2 decades with them.
I grew up a Chargers fan, so I have nothing to say.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know what I hope has a lot to say is what they appreciate the most in each other. Let's ask this next question.
Such a tender moment here.
Yeah. Well, they have a unique dynamic where they're really open and honest with each other. That's why we wanted to have them on, like let production people hear what that's like with the pastors. So Wes, as a production leader, what's some things that you truly appreciate about Matt's leadership and that you'd wish for any pastor/production leader relationship out there? And if you want to admit anything on the podcast that you don't like, feel free to say that as well. But
this is a safe space, Wes.
Safe space.
Honestly, I really think and this may be like don't do this to me for other people. I love that Matt comes up and gives me a hug every single time he sees me. I think it's just like, hey, you're not just my production dude. I actually love you. And that's just a tangible way that he expresses that. I also love that anytime he sees my wife, it's the same kind of greeting. And if there's something that he knows that we've been processing through or working through personally, he's always quick to check in with her on those things. So that things I don't like.
He took the bait.
I'll come up with something if I have to.
I was kind of kidding, Wes, but I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, I got nothing off the top of my head on what I don't like.
Okay, Matt, same question back to you. I mean, what's something you appreciate about Wes as your production leader, or about y'all's relationship?
Yeah, so I appreciate the excellence by which he does his job. And like, I don't know if it's true about all production guys, but Wes cares about the work of God at this church. And he will go, and it's one of the things, honestly, I have to try to keep an eye on, is he will go above and beyond to serve in ways that really aren't on his job description, but he sees that they need to get done and he does them. I love his servant heart. Like, he's the one that's making the coffee in the green room for everybody. I don't know that I've ever gotten here early enough on a Sunday morning to beat him having the coffee made and in the green room. And then that he kind of is a bit of a coffee snob and expert. And
it's really a control thing. And
I'm really grateful for that. And so there will be times I'm in a meeting with bad coffee and I will just text Wes, have you brewed coffee over there? And if he says yes, he will oftentimes say, sure, do you want me to bring you some? And if I want out of the meeting, I'll be like, no, I'm going to come get it. But oftentimes it's a meeting I can't leave. So I was like, oh my gosh, I would love that. Then Wes will bring me over a craft of his brewed coffee with a cup that he warmed up. It's just stuff like, he's just such a servant. I love watching him learn to be a husband. That's been awesome. And so I just think he embodies so much of the fruit of the Spirit, and he has taken me up on, let me know what I don't see. And not a lot of people have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Some do, but not all. And so I tend to have higher levels of trust for people who are willing to take me up on the offer to, what am I not seeing? What do I not know that I should know? And Wes has never been afraid to take me up on that, or to be real honest about, not the unhinged thoughts that he's had, but maybe the unfiltered thoughts that he had. And it's led to a deeper friendship and understanding of, so there are times now, like even during the reorg, I mean, as soon as it landed where it landed, I was like, Wes is not going to like that. And I just knew it was coming, where Wes was going to want to sit down, just go, I just need to express.
And we did. We got breakfast.
That I'm frustrated by this. And I was like, yeah, I'm here for it. I knew you would be. And so, yeah, those are the things I love about Wes.
Blake, it reminds me of when I gave you a boss in between you and I, and you were like, what are you doing to me, until you realized he's a way better boss.
Oh, it was, I was so mad at first too, Wes, but now I'm like, this is amazing.
And, a little bit of my story and background, I have kind of deep wounds from the church from my time in production. And I was very young and immature, and I'm the first one to admit that. But as I got older and I got into worship ministry and realized, like, oh my gosh, as a worship leader, I now have a relationship with the pastor and he knows my name and we have meetings together, that I know there's a lot of our listeners out there that, this hurts a little bit right now, because they're like, I think my pastor knows my name, but he has never given me a hug. He's never given me props directly. But I think this is really encouraging for some hope in the production community that, especially this day and age, production is so essential to what's happening on the weekend.
You said something to me. We were talking about the podcast, and you said, like, kind of almost like a word of caution.
What Wes and I were talking about earlier in the day was, I was a little anxious about this podcast in that I think my posture towards production apparently what I hear from production guys as I travel is a little bit different than what's normal. And what I didn't want to do is, have them listen to this and then a production guy go, oh, well, I'm going to take advantage of that with my pastor. I'm gonna go sit down with him and let him know, hey, here are my frustrations, and get himself fired.
Yeah.
And so that was a thing we talked about earlier in the day, that I hate it that production guys get burned and chewed through like they do. Honestly, it's probably something someone needs to say to lead pastors and preaching pastors. Really, the difference, just asking about their lives, getting to know their spouses and kids' names, asking about their week, which all just sounds so like such low-hanging fruit. Like, treat them like human beings, It just like, why do we have to say that?
Pastor your staff like you pastor your flock.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot written about that all the way around. The Unseen Flock is a book, I think, that was talking about how people on staff rarely are shepherded like the people in the church are shepherded. That would probably be all the more true for production guys.
Yeah.
And Matt, one thing I remember again about some of your teaching is you've talked about the way in which you prepare your heart for going up on stage and preaching, and that you have specific routines. What do you expect of your production team to prepare their hearts? Is it the same level, or is it a little bit different approach?
I expect Wes to come hoping to encounter the Lord as he does his work. That's what I'm doing. I'm showing up. I'm wanting and expecting the Lord to encourage me, rebuke me, build me up, and touch the deep parts of my soul when we've gathered in that room. That's why we've gathered, to be in the presence of God, to remember the gospel together. And my hope is that Wes is coming in with that posture. He's bringing something to the Lord in regards to gratitude, gladness, or brokenness. He's bringing his own offering, the state of his life, and that he would be expectant and open to the work of the Holy Spirit in his own life as he works the board.
Anything to add to that, Wes? That just put you on the spot right there.
Man, yeah, I was about to say, what a calling and a job.
Yes, I do that every week.
Do I consciously do that every week? No, I'm actively encountering the Lord every week. I don't think there's been a week recently where if I've sung out while I'm mixing, that I couldn't hold back tears, probably just because of where I am personally.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just the state of my own heart. And that's probably the Spirit trying to get me to, like, man, let it out.
Yeah.
So just to be vulnerable for all the other guys that probably feel the same thing, like, man, that's just where I'm at. But I also think that, like, it kind of, in some ways, just with how much I love what I do, it's hard to worship in the seats when I'm not in control. But when I'm at the board, like, I'm mixing for myself, and I know if I enjoy it, I'm feeling it. I know everyone else is going to also. So that kind of goes along with it. That doesn't mean I shouldn't sit down in the seats with my wife. But I will say, like, yeah, I mean, 100%, like, I feel met almost every single time, as long as I'm actually willing to engage, and not just do my job and press buttons.
Yeah.
So,
Wes, I love hearing, like, the tears coming down your eyes, as you're doing, like, you're on the board. Like, I think that's a really good encouragement for everyone to hear, like, be present as you're doing it. We wrap all of our episodes on a tech takeaway that I'd like to kind of ask both of you a version of this. So basically, for Matt, what do you wish all production people out there knew about their pastor? What is something you wish you could say to all of the church techs out there in the church production community to help them kind of understand and to support their pastor better? And then Wes, I'd ask that same question of you of, hopefully it doesn't get you in trouble right now with Matt, but what do you wish every pastor out there understood about their production people and the job that production teams do week in, week out? Kind of, what's that Eddie Murphy movie where they switch trading places, where they, change?
I'm so surprised you know this reference, Blake, because that's an 80s movie.
And in that moment, they kind of see each other's situations, and I'm kind of wanting you to do that same thing here.
Yeah. Gosh, that's really I think that's a difficult question.
It is tough to ask you to speak to an entire community at once.
Well, part part of what I want to say, but I'm trying to go, is that right? I think there should be a high level of respect and honor given to the one who teaches and preaches the word. I get that from the word, worthy of double honor. But just a word of caution, that person is not God, and his treatment of you is not a reflection of how God sees you. And that I would very much encourage you to make sure you're always remembering you're looking at a fallen human being, even if they are spectacularly gifted. In fact, some of the more spectacularly gifted people I know have some significant, serious flaws that can unintentionally hurt other people. And so for a production guy, especially if you're working with someone who's dynamic, if you're not careful, they kind of can be put on this place of, they can kind of replace like God himself in some ways. And I just think as soon as you're there, you're in a lot of trouble, because this is a flawed, very human individual that just happens to be gifted or used mightily by God. And you need to remember that it's not how he sees you or treats you that's most true, but what the scriptures say about you that's most true, that you're a son or a daughter, that you are beloved, that you are welcomed in his presence. And so that guy might have some brokenness in him that makes him unable to treat you the way God would have you be treated. Be careful not to tie that back to how God sees you and feels about you. I think that's what
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Say no names, but I could even envision one, friend as he's saying that. We talk to a lot of people in this space, and I was like, yep, viewing the pastor as God, even subconsciously, can get you in a lot of trouble for yes. So, Wes, what would you say in that same regard? That same question back to you. What's something that you wish every pastor out there understood about their production people and the job that their production teams do week in and week out?
You're right. This is hard.
It's a hard question.
We really, disguise all the nonsense at the beginning. It's like, oh, we're just hanging out. And then, the last question.
Damn, the gotcha moment.
Yeah. So the first thing that came to my mind is like, kind of like, I think everyone feels this at some point, but I'm not sure that it's the thing that is like maybe the most helpful. But similarly to what he's saying about how like, I'm fallen, treat me, but I'm redeemed by grace through the faith that I have in Jesus. Like, treat me the same way. Don't like, I don't know. I think the thing that I've been processing through the most recently, even, is like, I just want to be understood. I don't want to just be kind of taken for granted, if you will. And I'm not here. I know that. But I think as a whole, like my career and what I've walked through with the churches that I've been a part of, is feeling misunderstood is probably the thing that strikes the deepest. So if people just ask me questions to understand what I'm processing through, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And that way it's not like, I'm here to do a job and they don't actually care about me. I think that'll go a long way for pretty much everyone listening to this, if they're struggling with things that we've been hitting on here. And I think maybe this is where I can like tie into the first thought I had. I'm like, I don't want to just buy shiny toys.
Yeah.
I'm not just trying to get $100,000 soundboard. That's not what I'm about. Can we justify it? Probably. That's not what I'm about though. Like, I'll get the right tool for the job, but I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I love what I do and I want to be a part of something greater than me.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers.
Wes, that misunderstood is such a good word for this, because when we did our church tech pay survey and had over 400 submissions, I was shocked at more people. I didn't count this, but I think more people said they just wanted to be understood even more than they wanted more money. There was at least 3 different quotes where they said, I don't even want to raise. I just want people to understand what I do here and why it matters. So that's a great answer.
It's good.
Sweet. Well, guys, I'm out of questions unless, I joked with Blake that we should do a surprise game of Bible trivia, Matt versus Blake, but I didn't prepare ahead of time, and I was totally going to give Blake the answers anyways. So
I get weaker as the day goes on.
I'm glad it was.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even been contention.
That's awesome.
Guys, this is amazing. I really hope, and I think, honestly, this is super helpful for our audience just to hear and just realize that there is no perfect relationship between pastor and tech, but we're all aiming for, something more. And so I really hope this was fueling and feeding to their souls to think, obviously, Wes, you've worked a long time to build the trust that Matt has in you, and it's not going to happen overnight for them and their pastor. That's kind of one of the things I'm taking away from this. Like, it's a process, and just keep working on it and be honest with each other, and it can get better.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being on. And I just want to go back to where I beat Matt Chandler on 4 Truths and a Lie, because that's my moment to shine right there.
Your reward in heaven, I'm sure, is going to be great.
He's going to brag about this for a month.
I know.
That's he lost it. He already lost it on the call. He's already bragged. So it's sorry.
Yep.
Back at that.
Back of the line.
The room. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for taking that away from him, Matt. Seriously, both of you, thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Blake, I'm really hoping that the result of this series is that church techs can understand their pastors better, and that there will be a, just better line of communication and relationship between them.
Yeah, and if, with the pay series, you couldn't really send that to your pastor, right? That'd be kind of weird.
It depends on how you do it. And we even talked about that on the pay series, how to do this, respectfully and not passive aggressively.
But with this one, you're saying, hey, I just want to get to know you better. So send it to your pastor. Be like, hey, listen to this series with me. And at the end of it, we'll go out and have coffee and talk about our takeaways, any ways we can work better together.
And I sent it to my pastor, and all he said was, fire Blake.